Many believe that Shane McMahon to AEW was confirmed this past week on Wednesday night due to a line that Jon Moxley uttered in his promo. Obviously, this is one of the most interesting, biggest, and unexpected stories of the entire year. Shane McMahon to AEW. We're going to tell you everything we know, why Moxley's promo actually does hint towards Shane joining the company, what it could mean for not only Shane, but all Elite Wrestling and wrestling in general. All that much more coming up in this video. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Let's talk about it. Shane O'Mac, the man of the hour, the man who everyone has been talking about for the past couple of months and has been at the center of arguably the biggest news story in all of professional wrestling this year. What the hell is up with Shane and AEW? And it all started with a rumor. It genuinely all started with a rumor a couple of months ago about Shane McMahon and AEW. And then we kind of heard the rumblings that, well, Shane McMahon and Tony Khan had never met. And there was a chance meeting with Mercedes Moné and Shane McMahon at LaGuardia Airport after Forbidden Door. Then we heard that Shane was open to meeting with Tony Khan. Then Shane McMahon and Tony Khan met at an airport in Arlington. And here we are. This past week, in the fallout of All In, Jon Moxley made his return for the first time since AEW Forbidden Door, where he lost the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship to Tetsuya Naito. And in his return promo, while he was being interviewed with Tony Schiavone, he uttered a line that led many to believe that Shane was coming. Here is what he had to say. He turns around to Tony Schiavone, grabs the mic, and he says, "I'm going to tell you something. I want you to listen to me. It's going to take some time for everybody to wrap their brains around this, but we're going to start right now, okay? Listen to me. This is not your company anymore." Afterwards, in the backstage segment that he was in later on in the night, Jon Moxley was seen with Marina Shafir beating up people backstage, and it was that last line, "This is not your company anymore," that has led many people to speculate that Shane McMahon could be coming to do some sort of an invasion angle in All Elite Wrestling. Now, we're going to talk about how realistic that is and why I believe that there's more than nothing here. And I mean that in a way that I am of the opinion that I do think that this is the angle where we will see Shane. I genuinely do. And I'll tell you why in just a second. But we also need to acknowledge, right, kind of how wild it is that we got to this point. And kind of like what the speculation was for Shane, right? Because when in the fallout of like the meeting with Tony Khan, one of the questions was like, well, what would Shane do if he came in? And I think the obvious one was he would lead an invading force into AEW and potentially side with the EVPs, and we would see like a big faction warfare fallout in AEW, which would be an insane thing to do. Now, obviously, Shane McMahon is someone who is no stranger to, taking over companies, or this is not your company anymore, all that kind of stuff. I mean, the name on the contract does say McMahon, and it says Shane McMahon. That was like one of the biggest moments in pro wrestling history, genuinely. And Shane was a huge part of it. And there is an appetite, I think, to see that again. And that's why you're hearing all this stuff. That's why Tony Khan, I think, has made a point. Whenever he talks about Shane, whenever he talks about the meeting that he had with Shane, he does, of course, say that, hey, yeah, we met through a mutual friend. We had never talked before, yada, yada, yada. But he doesn't confirm nor deny anything. And Tony Khan is a man who's very careful with what he says when he says it. If he believes that he is in any way misleading fans, he will definitely confirm that this is not happening, right? He will let them know do not expect this. But he didn't do this with Shane. And if I'm looking at this, right? I watched Dynamite this past week, and I was thinking to myself, as like, that was the first thing that came in my head, right? Shane McMahon. And maybe it was like, at first I was like, am I thinking too deep into this? Am I too online? Am I too in the news? Am I reading too many dirt sheets? All that kind of stuff. I thought about it for a sec. And then immediately, like, as I'm processing all of this, I go back and I watch it. And then I hear what Taz and Excalibur say on commentary at the end. It wasn't like a line of, oh my God, Jon Moxley said this thing, and here's what it means. Or they didn't ignore the line, this is not your company anymore. This is something that AEW wants to come back to, because on commentary, Taz and Excalibur didn't know what that meant either. Taz and Excalibur were confused, just as confused as we initially may have been. And again, this is a company that really, really does its best to not oversell things where it's unneeded. And I think the next couple of days are going to be important for this, because at this point, a lot of people are kind of expecting Shane. I still would not expect it imminently, because as Jon Moxley noted in this promo, he says it's going to take a while for people to wrap their brains around this. I think that could be at any time. But for that reason, like for the reason that they're going to come back to it, it seems, for the reason that it does seem like if you want an invading force in AEW, one of the guys that you would want would be the ace of AEW, like Jon Moxley, who is like the ace of AEW, the guy who the company goes to whenever the chips are down. CM Punk crashes out at the press conference at All Out, and the Elite gets suspended, CM Punk gets suspended, and all that kind of stuff. Moxley's there to save the company. Moxley the champion. Moxley weathers the storm. Same thing when Punk got injured the first time. Same thing when they entered the pandemic. Every single time the company has needed him, Jon Moxley has been there. But now he is in a different landscape with AEW. He's looking at a landscape where you have MJF, who's just like lost it, and he's like a maniac, whatever. You have Tony Khan incapable of controlling his EVPs. This is not the same AEW that Moxley walked into. This is not the same AEW Moxley was promised by Tony Khan. And I think there's a storyline element you could tell there where Moxley's sick of it. Moxley is sick of Tony Khan, someone who at first he may have respected, at first he may have liked, at first he may have been friends with. But he's sick of him not being able to control the people in that locker room, and for everything to have to be on his back. Genuinely believe that there's great potential for storytelling there. I think that the likelihood that this is Shane, again, I would say probably 60% that this is Shane, which is way more than half, and honestly pretty like that's me being like, yeah, I think it's probably going to end up being Shane. And I think Shane leading a faction with Jon Moxley, with potentially Marina Shafir, with potentially Darby Allin, like, and many more. I think there's a lot of potential there. And regardless of what people are going to say, there's going to be spin about this. AEW has a big issue with feeling like a hot company. They like what the perception issues that have plagued this company over the past year, and I say plagued in a very like in almost a tongue-in-cheek way, because we're all comparing it to 2021 and where the perception and energy behind AEW was then. Like that was like no other. But at the same time, they're about to sign this big contract. They're about to be more profitable than they've ever been. But they're trying to get this perception back that AEW is the cool place to be. That AEW is the place where anything can happen. That AEW is the show that you want to watch. It is must-see TV. I think Shane McMahon leading an invasion would help make it that even more than they've already worked on it this year. I think they've made a drastic improvement ever since June in the product on a weekly basis. It has been the hottest wrestling show, and it's not even close. We're on SmackDown, get more numbers, and that is true, and it is 100% true that AEW will not beat either of those shows in ratings. At the same time, it does not dictate the quality of the show. Fact of the matter is, AEW Dynamite is the best wrestling show on TV. And you want to give it an even more of an injection and a boost in its arm as you head into the new year, over the next couple of months, as you head into your new television rights, media rights deal, whatever it's going to be with WBD. I think Shane McMahon plays a big role in that. I think this story could play a big role in that, because you're going to have a lot of people, at least for that initial time, you can have a lot of people being like, wait, Shane McMahon just invaded another wrestling company and it's not WWE? It's going to be an opportunity to capitalize on momentum, to highlight your stars, to highlight your stories, to highlight what AEW means. It is by no means the one thing that's going to set things off, but it can help. And it can serve as another building block in addition to everything they've done. Remember, this is not like a company that's going out of business. It's a company that just sold 50,000 tickets for Wembley Stadium. This is a company that is consistently selling over 150,000 pay-per-view buys nearly on a monthly basis. They're fine financially. They don't necessarily need to be better financially, but you always want to be perceived as a hot product. That is what's going to help with ticket sales. That is what's going to help with perception. That is what's going to help in the free agency wars. And if AEW wants to be the challenger brand that Tony Khan has set it out to be and has claimed that it is, they need to capitalize on big stars during big moments and make sure here, this is the important part, that they are still focusing on what makes the product great. That is great professional wrestling and story-driven, realistic objectives of these individuals. The storytelling and the characters that AEW has amassed over the past 5 years are quite frankly insane. Like the depth to some of their main characters, like Hangman Page, untouchable when you think about it, for wrestlers, like outside of like maybe the Bloodline, right? They need to keep doing that. I think Shane McMahon has the potential to not only bring like a spotlight to that, but genuinely like as he's a compelling guy when he's on the mic, when he's there, like there's an aura about him. Whether or not you agree with it, whether or not you think he's too old, McMahon brings an aura about him that is special, and that I think, you know, people weirdly have a connection to, even though he's like a billionaire and all that kind of stuff. Like he does have that kind of relatability that made him into that like affable baby face when he was in WWE. So we'll see what happens though. Obviously, there's a lot of dominoes to fall here, and at the end of the day, I don't think Shane is actually going to come into like any sort of like a managerial role or backstage role with AEW. I hope he doesn't. That Royal Rumble that he booked was god-awful, one of the worst Royal Rumbles of all time. I think if he did come in, it would be through the lens of a character on TV. I also think like it is no coincidence that picture got out of him and Tony Khan meeting. I think that was deliberately planted, whether by Shane's team or Tony Khan's team, we don't know. But I do believe it was deliberately planted, and not only for us to talk about it, which obviously we talked about it brought interest to the product, brought into eyeballs to the story and all that kind of stuff, but also I think that it meant that they had laid something out. Again, maybe I'm recklessly speculating. Maybe you guys disagree. I want to hear from you guys, though. Shane McMahon to AEW, what would it do for the business? Like, they're about to go and do all these big stadium shows next year. You have the Tokyo Dome. You have a Grand Slam in Australia. You have All in Texas. You have potentially another stadium show in London. We don't know where that's going to be, but you have some big shows, some big stadiums you need to fill. Shane McMahon might help do that. We'll see what happens, though. Guys, let me know in the comments section, though, what do you guys think about this entire situation? Jon Moxley's promo, was he hinting towards Shane McMahon? Was he maybe hinting towards something else? Was it just kind of like we'll see what happens. I'm going to get a group of rough, tough people together and we're going to fight? Or was it something more? What would you like to see Shane McMahon do if he did indeed enter All Elite Wrestling? And would it be the move that kills AEW, because I know there's going to be some of you people out there too. But I love every single one of you. You guys haven't already done so, do me a massive favor. Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.